Most of you watching right now probably like sports.
Again, two backs, option toss, ball blue on the edge, blocker ahead, blue cuts inside the 5, touchdown, Liberty!
You like attending the games for seats, the players, the food, and just the experience of being there in person and watching the action live. But you don't always get to watch games in person. So you watch from the comfort of your homes. For quite some time now, live entertainment has been available to watch almost anywhere. Your television, your phone, at restaurants, and it's all thanks to broadcast. Broadcast does the opposite of having to physically go to your favorite sporting events and brings your favorite sporting events to you. Through elaborate connections and a large team of very skilled individuals, broadcast allows what's happening in one place to be shared all over the world. From ESPN and Fox News to shows like Jeopardy and Saturday Night Live, live entertainment continues to be one of America's most popular forms of entertainment. But broadcast isn't used just for entertainment. With the state our country is in now, news is one of the most important things that broadcast is used for. But I'm not going to get political here in the slightest. Back in early 2020, COVID changed how this country operates, shutting down just about everything from restaurants to jobs to fans attending sports games, and most importantly, churches. Many churches closed their doors during that time, heavily limiting the reach of the gospel. When my home church got the order to shut down for COVID, my late pastor refused, saying he wouldn't stop preaching just because of the outbreak. My church turned to broadcasting the sermons live to all the members that stayed home during the pandemic. And now, it's something we keep up with to this day. I have volunteered many times before and during college to help with the live productions, and that experience is mostly what led me to this field in the first place. First, I want to further explain the work that goes into any broadcast and the people behind the scenes. If you've ever been to any sporting event or concert, you've very well seen cameras and lights all over the place. These are clearly critical to any broadcast, but what you may not have seen is just as important. Every broadcast has a control room, a room where several people work to get that live event to your television at home. Directors, producers, technical directors, audio engineers, graphics, replay, and shading are positions you're guaranteed to find in a control room for sports games. Directors and producers run the show, ensuring that communication and instructions are circulated throughout the room. Technical directors and audio engineers have control over what you see and hear, taking transitions and graphics, and adjusting audio and adding music respectively. The graphics op creates the graphics and updates them as the game continues. The replay op scrubs through gameplay footage for clean shots to replay, and the video shader maintains the brightness and contrast of the video feed. As with any broadcast, these positions, aside from replay, are key to making a church's live sermons available online. Each position has a notable difference to those in sports or news productions, and it's all due to the content. With church being a house of prayer, reverence, and respect for God, broadcasts will run a little differently from those in worldly events. And you may say, the cameraman's eyes were open during prayer, but he's not being disrespectful. He's doing what needs to be done to further the reach of the kingdom. To preface what I'm going to talk about next, my church has two places where production takes place, front of house and back of house. Both of these have a separate audio and graphics system, front of house being used for output in the sanctuary and back of house being used for the live broadcast. On the surface, a rundown of a church service may seem simple or unnecessary, but trust me, it's just as important as a rundown for any other broadcast. When I receive a rundown of the service, I get information about the speakers, not just the preachers, what song the praise team is singing, and who's leading those songs, and most importantly, the scriptures being read during the service. When I volunteer, the positions I get assigned are usually graphics or audio engineer, and those are positions that need a rundown the most. Graphics like scriptures, song lyrics, and slides are prepared in advance, just like they are at sporting events. There's been instances where I've had to scramble to find scriptures as the preacher called them out because the team was missing a rundown that day. Cameras are a little tricky when producing church broadcasts because they need to be strategically placed to get good angles of the speaker while being unobtrusive to those in the congregation. My church uses 4 cameras, 2 of which are mobile and 2 are stationary. During praise and worship, camera 1 goes handheld and gets close-ups of the singers and band. Camera 2 focuses on the lead singer. Camera 3 usually switches between shots of the congregation and the pianist. And camera 4 is our constant wide shot, occasionally getting shots of 3 or 4 singers at a time. When the preaching begins, cameras 1 and 3 move backwards in between aisles to get medium wide shots of the pastor. From this point, the broadcast has some small adjustments to operating style. Church is a place to be reverenced and respected, so the team must operate with reverence and respect too. Unlike in sports broadcasts, where fast-paced action shots are all you could ever ask for, a church service requires transitions that are smoother and intentional. You'll see a lot more dissolves than cuts, and no fancy over-the-top graphic transitions. Unless you attend a megachurch, then maybe you'll see one of those. But we don't do that. The graphics operator needs to keep up with switching scriptures and slides, and taking the pastor or the sermon's title lower thirds every so often. This will keep the congregation at home engaged and make them feel like they're in the house of the Lord too. The audio engineer needs to keep the pastor's voice at a steady level. Luckily, there's no excessive cheering or clapping, but it does happen sometimes. They have to be monitoring the pastor in case she needs to get a sip of water or something to that extent. There's a completely different atmosphere that needs to be taken into account when producing a church broadcast. Now that you understand the similarities and differences between church and sports broadcasts, you might ask, where do you broadcast to? While I can't say that a church service is going to be broadcast to Fox News, there are other platforms that your church could access, the most obvious being YouTube. YouTube was the main platform that my church used when starting live broadcasts. My church already had a YouTube channel that put out edited sermons and short-form spiritual content. But sometime last year, the channel got multiple strikes because YouTube didn't exactly like what my pastor was preaching, and my church stopped broadcasting there. An alternative platform would be a website or an app, both of which my church uses for live broadcasts now. One last thing to mention is the people themselves. In the case of sporting events, the individuals working in the control room are most likely there because they're employed, meaning they have a substantial amount of experience in the industry, and I guarantee that they know what they're doing. At my church, and I'm certain this is the case with many churches, most of those working in the control room are volunteers. Before COVID, when I was around age 15, I started volunteering as an audio engineer, and I needed training. The training I received was enough to run audio for the production, but it wasn't even remotely close to the level that you'll see in LBX. We ran into a lot of issues then, and we still have new issues to deal with to this day. But since this past February, I've been officially employed at my church and have been a part of the services in one way or another. My time and experience at LBX has greatly improved my skills and allowed me to do more than I ever could. Now, I work in live television broadcast for It's Time to Be Healed, a weekly series on healing, as well as create church announcements and graphics that might even give New at LU a run for its money. Okay, I'm just kidding. In conclusion, church broadcasts and sports broadcasts aren't all too different from each other, but as someone who works in this industry, I think it's important to know the difference. The skills, the teamwork, and proper planning are a necessity in both, but the style, atmosphere, and goal of each are what separates the two. I'm thankful that I was given the opportunity to work for the Liberty Broadcast Experience, and I truly believe providing students with an opportunity like this can only increase the quality of church broadcasts. And while the point isn't to show off and look good for the world, no one wants to produce or watch a bad broadcast. The point is to be a part of the Great Commission that Jesus called us to and to preach the gospel to every creature through the gift of broadcast.